Well, good morning and welcome to this morning's edition of Hardware Store Hacks. A few simple ideas that don't come from the big box marine store but make life a little easier. Thought I'd introduce these. Noticed last night sailing Thalia that she was a little sluggish, and I guess she's been in the water now for a few months and it's time to scrub off some of the bottom growth. She's getting a little scruffy at and below the waterline, thanks to the era of bottom paint that has half as much bad stuff in it and has to be applied 3 times as often. Well, you do the math. Anyway, that's not what this is about. I wanted to introduce a few really simple things here today that as I get older and I'm less enamored of the idea of jumping in the water to scrub the bottom. These ideas have come from the hardware store and made life a little easier. So, starting out at position number 1 here, you might think that this is a deck brush, and if you went to the big W box store, they'd sell it to you as such for quite a pile of cash. But what you're really looking at here comes from your local hardware store, and it's called a roofing brush. I think these are used to spread tar on flat tarred roofs. I don't really know. But a roofing brush will set you back, well, $5 or less at the local hardware store. A deck brush, well, you can guess, quite a bit more. So that's a handy thing. Coming over here, these two are versions 2 and 3 of what I like to call the bottom broom. Now you might say, well, that's not a broom at all. No, it's not. We'll come back to that in a little bit with the first version, which was actually a street broom. These two are squeegees. I believe their intent is to spread blacktop sealant on your driveway. Again, you know, available at Lowe's Hardware for somewhere south of $20. The idea here with the squeegee is that it's a relatively pliable material, relatively soft in both cases, and it's just hard enough to knock loose what I call soft growth, slime, the kind of growth that grows on the bottom paint but isn't necessarily barnacles. You know, barnacles will start to form down there, and you'll hear some of those. They'll kind of go crunch as you're doing this. But these are really meant to take the soft stuff off without removing too much of your bottom paint. Now the importance of that is that over here on Cheris, I typically haul every 2 years. Used to not be a problem getting commercial grade copper bottom paints to make it through 2 years. That's less the case these days, so I'm pretty careful about not taking off too much ablative paint each time that I scrub off the soft growth. I can still get through 2 years, but it gets a little touch and go toward the end. So the concept here is really simple. You take something that's meant to work downward, and you attach some buoyancy to it in the form of these pool noodles zip tied on. You attach it to a long and preferably adjustable handle, such as a painter's extended roller handle like this one. In the case of the short one, which I use at the water line or if I am in the water, this is just a car snow scraper that happened to fit perfectly into the threaded end of the driveway spreader there. So what you're looking at here is one of the upsides to the study of naval architecture. Hasn't made me rich, but an understanding of buoyancy and how it can work in your favor is the key. So as you push this thing down underneath the hull of your boat, what's happening is the buoyancy of the pool noodle is pushing it up against the bottom of the boat. That's work that you're not having to do. Now you do have to overcome the buoyancy and push downward. I'll tell you, that's a whole lot easier than being in the water and pushing upward with your arms. And the older I get, the more I appreciate that nuance. So these are nothing more than products that are meant to sweep downward. adapted to push upward against the bottom of the boat with a little added buoyancy. And what I'm going to do today is just knock some of the loose growth off Thalia so that she's not a racing boat, but it's nice when she doesn't miss stays and when she's slipping through the water at her best. And as promised, here we have bottom broom, the alpha version 1, using an actual street broom and a extendable telescoping handle. And reverted back here to its original purpose of sweeping the ground instead of the bottom of the boat. This worked reasonably well. The biggest negative, I would say, is that some of the little sea monkeys managed to sneak in between the bristles, and then those that you did sweep off tended to live in the bristles for a healthy week or so, which tended to get a little pungent. This was a stinkier version. It's been laid to rest in favor of the squeegee version. So up here in the forward sections that are fairly vertical, I am doing most of the work and pushing against the hull. But you can see that I am knocking loose a fair amount of this soft growth. Side note, when you do this in the water, these little critters that I like to call sea monkeys have this tendency to grab onto every possible hair follicle or anything else they can get a grip on and crawl all over you for about 3 days after. It's pretty miserable. Why do I call them sea monkeys? Well, a bunch of years ago when I was looking for cool holiday gifts for my 8 nephews and nieces, these little aquariums that you could buy and set up, where you set these somehow freeze-dried shrimp organisms into them and they came back to life, crawled around for a while. They became very popular. They were a kind of fun gift for kids, teach them a little bit about biology and sea life. But of course, you know, like all aquarium pets, they eventually went south and got flushed. My theory is that that's when these little critters in the ocean really became a menace. Pretty sure they're sea monkeys that got flushed down the toilet. Anyway, as you can see, I push downward, the swim noodle pushes upward, and the result is sweeping off a swath of this soft growth. Incidentally, if there is a barnacle, you hear it. You hear sort of a crunchy sound as the soft squeegee sweeps past it. And the arrangement here is pretty simple. I just secure the work skiff on both ends to the side of the boat so that as I'm pushing outward and downward, she's held against the side of the boat. And that allows me to work an area like I've just done here. And then the whole purpose to having the deck brush along is that's our waterline cleaner. So now we go back and give her a little waterline scrub so that she looks good. That doesn't do anything for performance, but makes you feel good looking over and seeing that she's well kept. In the words of the late great Captain Bob Douglas, nothing worse than a bad boat owner, and nothing makes you feel like a bad boat owner more than looking over and seeing that grubby water line that you've just been too lazy to clean. So there is a bit of technique here, which is that you have to sort of adjust your pace. Pull back slowly, because as you're pulling back, if you pull back too quickly, the buoyancy doesn't have time to push the cleaning surface up into the turn of the bilge. So you've got to do this at sort of a slow, regulated pace downward. As you go downward to the vertical part of the keel, you're pushing inward more so. it's not 100% either. If you were to go in the water after this procedure, certainly you would find spots that you missed. As I mentioned in the sailing video, part of the joy and security of sailing later in life is finding ways that will allow you to keep sailing later in life. And that, for me, I want to find ways that I can keep doing this for richer or poorer. This is my lifestyle. This is one of them. This is certainly a whole lot less stressful on the old bones than digging out 80 pounds worth of dive gear and stretching into a wetsuit and getting underwater and giving the shoulders a workout they're not accustomed to. Obviously this is going to work differently on different bottom shapes. I find with the full keel, the area that gets missed the most is the turn of the bilge, where the keel turns outward into the dead rise. But even so, if you go about it slowly enough and you let the work skip out far enough so that you can actually get the squeegee to rise up into that area, it's a pretty good job. Oh, you can hear that little crunch right there. That was a barnacle that was evicted. The soft surface of the squeegee isn't going to knock all the barnacles off, but there is also the metal blade that holds the squeegee, and if that comes in contact with a barnacle, well, it's pretty much going to knock its block off. As I mentioned, this particular squeegee and the small one that I have on the car windshield scraper next to me here both came from Lowe's. You'll find them in the driveway section. I'll put a picture up there. And they're just stiff enough to spread driveway sealant, which makes them just stiff enough to knock off slime without scraping off too much of your bottom paint. Well, there you have it. 20 minutes and $20. She's not a gold plater, but she's clean. She looks a little better. She'll sail a little better. And I'll feel a little better about being a good boat owner. Thanks for coming along and checking this out today.